All right. So I'm going to try to keep this video short. I'm going to try. And as you can see on the screen or in the video, I have an article pulled up. Now, to touch lightly on this, let me go to my Twitter real quick. I should have had this pulled up ages ago. But it relates to the article I'm about to talk about. I have mentioned that I have emailed the deputy to the honorable judge whom is calling the meeting and sent an email voicing my opinion on how the county has handled the situation thus far. I just have to hope that the deputy passes my email along. Okay. And I was talking to a buddy for a while about this, and now I'm going to talk to you guys about it. And I'm going to try to keep it short. So as you can see, the headline is that a fed up judge orders meeting on homeless with city leaders at Skid Row shelter. What's missing from this article is the location and Dayton or location and time. I have a rough idea where it's at. I know what time it is, and I'm going to try my hardest to make it. And this is where I'm going to need your help. But before I get into any of that, let me read off the article. So, during his downtown visit on Friday, U.S. District Judge David Carter witnessed the impact of the wet, cold weather on homeless residents, particularly elderly women and victims of mental illness, at least one of whom was naked and suffering from hypothermia, he wrote. Okay? At least that's the sum of it. A fed-up federal judge in California said last week's rainstorm created extraordinary harsh conditions for homeless residents of Los Angeles, prompting him to order the city officials to meet with him at a Skid Row shelter to discuss how to address the worsening crisis of people living on the streets. These conditions cannot be allowed to continue, U.S. District Judge David Carter wrote in a strongly worded order on Sunday. Impressive. He worked on a Sunday. Not many judges do. The action involves a lawsuit filed last March by the LA Alliance of Human Rights, which accused officials in Greater Los Angeles of failing to comprehensively address the homelessness problem. Carter calls out the city for making promises but ultimately doing nothing substantial to address the appalling and dangerous situation facing people living on Skid Row, the notorious epicenter of homelessness in downtown LA. It is, actually. Some buses actually don't run down there. The storms last week and a lack of preparation seems to have pushed Judge Carter over the top, said Daniel Conway, policy advisor for the Alliance, a coalition of service providers, small business owners, residents, and community leaders. Representatives with the Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcia's office didn't immediately respond to requests for comment. During his downtown visit on Friday, Carter witnessed the impact of the wet, cold weather on homeless residents, particularly elderly women and victims of mental illness, at least one of whom was naked and suffering from hypothermia, he wrote. Andy Bales, the CEO of the homeless shelter Union Rescue Mission, who was with the judge during the tour, said what they saw was despicable. These ladies were suffering out here in the rain, in the cold. Some didn't have shoes, Bales said Monday. Citing the COVID-19 pandemic and soaring mental health and substance abuse issues among those living on the streets, the judge compared homelessness to a significant natural disaster in Southern California with no end in sight. The judge has asked officials to outline the steps the city has taken and intends to take to tackle homelessness at the hearing Carter called for Thursday at the Downtown Women's Center. Said Rob Wilcox, a spokesman for the LA City Attorney. Mike, oh, well, God, I'm awful with pronunciation of last names. So we'll call him Mike F. The hearing will address whether the court should deploy remedies to deal with the crisis, the judge wrote. Conway said possible actions include a consent decree, which, if all parties agree, would effectively end the lawsuit with a settlement giving Carter ultimate power to order the city and the county to build shelters and provide services. So basically, this will make him the new Caesar of the homeless population. There's a real possibility that Los Angeles' new homeless Caesar could be a federal judge, Conway said. A January 2020 count by the Los Angeles Homeless Service Authority. I'm trying not to laugh because I have my own stories for LASA. Reported that there were more than 66,400 homeless people living in Los Angeles County, by far the largest single concentration in the state. That included more than 41,000 within the city limits. Both figures were up more than 12% from the previous year. Carter noted that 1,383 homeless people died in the city and county of Los Angeles last year, a 32% increase from 2019. In June, Carter approved a deal as part of the ongoing lawsuit that saw the city and county agreeing to provide housing for almost 7,000 homeless people who live near freeways and those over 65 or vulnerable to COVID-19. Since that agreement, little progress has been made, and the judge on Sunday slammed local officials for their apparent abdication of responsibility to keep the streets safe. He added that the court cannot allow the paralysis of political process to continue to endanger lives. Bell said Union Rescue Mission, Councilman Kevin De Leon's office, and others on Friday tried to find a place to immediately erect temporary rain shelters, but they ended up in a conflict about possible locations with members of the mayor's staff. A turf war broke out right in front of our eyes, he said. At the end of the day, a small number of hotel rooms were purchased to get some of the women out of the rain, said Pete Brown, a spokesman for De Leon. The councilman will attend Thursday's hearing, Brown said. Bell said he hopes Carter will use the full power of the court to address the crisis. Absolutely, he should act, Bell said. We need immediate shelter and safety, and politicians aren't getting the job done. Okay. So with the article read and out of the way, let me break this down to you. From my perspective, I can only break down this article from my perspective because I have some stories that relate to this. So I've been personally, myself, I have been homeless for 8 years. Even though I'm in a motel room right now, that's by you can say on one hand the graces of God, and on the other hand you could say, oh man, I've been real lucky. It's a mixture of the both. I plan to attend this meeting, but what I will get to say will vary based on the amount of time. And the problem is there's very little time to say it all in. So I will try to bullet point some of these examples. What I mean by little to say it all in. Okay? Using this article as a reference because it brings up certain topics that I feel need a little bit more in-depth detail than anything else. So, this where it says the storms last week and the lack of preparation. Okay. People who have lived on the streets long enough have a couple of different sleeping spots, even I do, where you will sleep based on if it's hot or if it's raining, and then your normal spot, which you'll sleep at the rest of the year. These spots are picked out based on local law enforcement and how they react to homeless people being in their city. The sheriffs are sadly the most, based on my experience, are the most hard-nosed. So they will tell you to move along. Police departments, or PD for short, which are a step below sheriffs, are more lenient because they follow whatever the city tells them to do. So if you're sleeping on the sidewalk in their city, they're not going to mess with you. Yeah, if you're just laying there, all right, yeah, what do you want? Right? With that said, the rains are not that hard to deal with. Okay. But what's making it hard on the homeless population right now is that this whole you can't sleep under freeways, don't want encampments. All of this is creating unnecessary hardship. Okay. The thing I would like to see is the judge to file a cease and desist of what I would consider essentially police harassment on the homeless. Meaning, if the homeless are not committing a crime, like involving knives, broken glass bottles, mugging each other, guns, vandalism of property. What I mean by actual vandalism is like taking a hammer and hitting the building, breaking windows. At the bare minimum, tagging. Because you have to keep in mind, for the longest period during lockdown, bathrooms were closed to the homeless. So you have to be able to go to the bathroom in the bushes. Sorry, it's on a quote-unquote private property, and I say quote-unquote because I understand that's a lot owned by a some sort of realtor that is renting out the business spaces. Therefore, it's technically private property, but not owned by one person, but owned by usually a group of investors. And, you know, based on personal experience, when you gotta go, you gotta go. And this whole nonsense that trying to go to the bathroom, you know, the police will use the excuse of, well, it looks suspicious. I'm sorry, but during COVID, during this pandemic, when there's no bathrooms open because of the pandemic, okay, at the very most, yeah, I want to go somewhere where there is some sort of privacy to go. Okay? Like, sorry if I have to go in the middle of the night, in the dark. Okay? But I'm not willing to exactly bear all what God gave me to the public. But I've been told it looks suspicious because I've had a police encounter. So that'd be a good start. A cease and desist to that, and a cease and desist on the whole can't sleep under freeways. How do you expect the homeless to dodge the rain? Freeway overpass. That's it. Okay? Not many of us want to carry around a tent because it's a pain in the butt to disassemble and break down and then do it all over again at night. Okay? So the judge also calls out the city for making promises but not doing nothing. Okay. Yes and no. I agree with him. But I also disagree. I agree because Lhasa claims on Twitter, okay, that okay. So if I go to Twitter, right, put up my messages. Matter of fact, I spoke to this lady. Give me a second. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. Okay, so Lhasa mentions on Twitter, as you can see, the Los Angeles Homeless Service Authority. This is their Twitter. Okay. This is LASA. Okay, that was, if I'm not mistaken, is a joint effort between the county and the state. Okay. I'll explain a little bit of what they do. Yeah, I reported the tweet for their inaccuracy of information here. Or at least I consider inaccuracy of information. They say permanent housing is more cost-efficient method of ending chronic homelessness than shelter. It costs $20,000 per person to house someone, while a chronically homeless person can use up to $40,448 in services every year. Now, in my opinion, it's total BS. The reason for that is because I've seen, in the 8 years I've been homeless, I have seen less than $100 in services. Now, if you include motel voucher as a service, then I've seen less than $100. Okay? And I did some math on this. Okay? If they're claiming to help a chronically homeless person, which that would be me because of the amount of time I've been homeless, if it costs us $40,000, let's just call it $40,000 flat. If it costs us $40,000, how? Because I do have a traveling companion due to my own mental disabilities of social anxiety disorder, which makes it hard for me to interact with the public in general. My traveling companion helps me with dealing with the public. So right there, okay, I'm gonna grab my calculator real quick. So if they're saying 40 grand per person, right? So that would be 80 grand, right? But the motel room a year. If the state of California did not have a 28-day stay limit, okay, for a whole year to stay in a motel room is about, give or take, 25 grand. It's like 24,000 and some on 100 and change. Okay. So therefore, if you combine two people in the same motel room and paid for a whole year, okay, so if you subtract 25, we'll call it 25 grand flat. LASA has an extra then at that point 55 grand. Obviously, the savings continues. So let's say you house 3 people in a motel room, 3 homeless people in a motel room. Okay, that motel room will still come out to the same price. So that's 120,000 minus 25 grand equals a remaining balance of $95,000. Okay. I, a homeless person who has seen less than $100 in services provided in a year, or in 8 years, actually. How are they allowed to claim this number? They shouldn't be allowed to. Okay? And when I've publicly called out the County Board of Supervisors, LA County's Board of Supervisors, the mayor of Los Angeles, and the governor of California, Gavin, no answers, no callbacks, no responses to my emails, no responses to my messages to them on Twitter publicly. No responses. He's been dead silent. Okay? Then you know what? Where is my 40 grand a year in the last 8 years? But I won't be greedy. Okay? Granted, yeah, that'd be 320,000, I think? Rough calculating here. So let's say 25 grand at least for the last 8 years. Well, it comes out to at least 200 grand, right? So where's my 200 grand loss, huh? You know, with 200 grand, I can easily get off the streets and buy a very tiny home, most likely out of state, and continue to work and do what I need to do, because I work, but I only work temp agency work, which is basically like, you can think people in the United States, temp agency work is like, temporal hiring agency. It's like People Ready, or well, it's called People Ready now. Before that, it used to be called Labor Ready. And then you have the smaller ones that are not as well known, but they pay a little bit better in terms of after they take their cut of finding you the work, and some provide transportation, things like that. Okay, so if it costs them $20,000 per sheltered homeless person and $40,000 for the per chronic homeless person, then why am I only seeing like $100 equivalent? There's a lot of money missing there in assistance. Okay. So the storms are not that bad. So the pros and cons is that, the city is actually trying, and so is the county. But LAHSA is also messing that up somehow. And so it's a yes and no. And then when you call the board of supervisors directly at the Kenneth Hall of Administration and speak to one of the board of supervisors, they don't have an answer. So yes, by not having answers, yes, they are doing bad. The article mentions during his downtown visit on Friday, Carter witnessed the impact of wet, cold weather conditions on homeless residents, particularly elderly women and victims of mental illness. Okay, I suffer with PTSD, bipolar 2. I'm considered not schizophrenic. It's called schizoaffective. And that's because I have racing thoughts. And and I suffer with social anxiety and general anxiety and general depression. So basically, I'm always depressed and down and gloom and everything that comes with it. I understand there's people that have more severe mental conditions than I, and that's fine. But my argument here is that the elderly, okay, here's the real problem. The reason why a lot of elderly are homeless is because in the state of California, we have not nursing facilities. I guess you can call them halfway houses, or like, not convalescent homes, but like care facilities, let's call it that. I don't know their actual term, but basically it's a senior home. Yeah, there we go. We'll call it a senior home. It's a senior home. Whatever the insurance does not pay, the rest comes out of their pension or Social Security. Now, if the elderly gets Social Security, these senior homes take pretty much all of it, because they have the in-home nurse. They do all the cooking and laundry. And, they're cared for really good. But in exchange, that they have to give up their check pretty much completely. At least I would say, at least most of them is like in like 98% of their check. So if they get Social Security, they're only getting maybe like $20 pocket change. So the elderly homeless that you see on the streets had to make a decision at some point in their life, where do I want to be in this place and have no money, or would I rather be homeless and have my money? They obviously chose to be homeless and have their money. Okay, this has nothing to do with the county. This has nothing to do with the state. This has everything to do with the government dictating what these facilities can and cannot do. And they're taking way too much of their money, to be honest. I understand that running those facilities are not cheap, but they're taking way too much money. And to be honest, if I had to make the same choice, I'd probably be homeless too. I'd rather keep my money. Yeah, because for as much money as they're having to give up per person, every person that lives there, they feed you food there that I would consider slightly better than county jail food. Slightly better. And that's not by much. Okay. So the problem there lies with, the laws. Our president has to do something about this. Okay. So traditions, blah blah. Sorry, I'm catching up on the article. I kind of lost my place for a second. My called on particularly elderly women and victims of mental illness. Yeah, and dealing with dealing with mental illness or having mental illness is hard because a lot of these places don't understand how bad my social anxiety is. Like, to give you a more recent example, is like, okay, so my traveling companion. So when the maid, this is from my personal experience because this is how bad my social anxiety is. Basically, if the maid comes to the door and wants to ask something, I literally go hide in the bathroom until my companion answers the door, talks with the maid, and the maid finally goes away. Then I come back out. That's how bad my social anxiety is in person. Online, it's like whatever. But in person, it's real bad. Okay? And so it's difficult for me to get the assistance I need because there's all these HIPAA rules and regulations that's like, no, we got to speak to him directly. And to make things even worse, the Department of Social Services that we refer to as general relief or provides general relief that gives us food stamps and cash assistance don't understand that. So to get to give you a more recent example, I got cut off at midnight for supposedly some paperwork I didn't receive or didn't come in yet. And my traveling companion under my supervision has to pretend to be me and answer all the questions and talk with the representative and do all this over the phone just to get me back my food stamps at least. Okay. And potentially within a couple of days, my cash aid. Okay. Because they don't understand, what it's like to have my conditions. And they'll never understand. No matter how much you mention it in the file, no matter what you do, they don't understand. Okay? And if that makes me a victim, then you know what? Fine, I'm a victim. But to say mental illness is an interference is hard because I do a lot of remote work, basically. Work where I don't deal with other people. So I don't do anything specifically customer service. I do a lot of warehouse stuff, usually. Other times it is actual remote work. It's funny that a job agency can understand that better than the Department of Social Services or any government assistance programs. So yeah, that's an issue because they don't understand. And there's no oversight committee for it because it's not really an ADA violation, which is the American with Disabilities Act. It's not really a violation. And without that oversight, yeah, it's going to be more difficult for the homeless with mental conditions, yes. Okay, but again, this has nothing to do with the county or the city. This has everything to do with our government not doing enough, not stepping in and saying, hey, what's a barrier? That's one of them. So as I mentioned, the elderly can, had to choose between keeping their money. So they mentioned that ladies were suffering. Oh, sorry for the background noise. They say that the ladies were suffering in the rain and the cold. Some didn't have shoes. Yeah, that's normal. That's both men and women. I've seen it. Okay. Okay, but no hospital, no one cares. I've been lucky with the internet that people on the internet cared more than these nonprofits, cared more than the Department of Social Services, cared more than anybody physically around me when I was sick, sleeping outside in the cold on the very cold nights while sick, and have not eaten. I've been lucky. Okay? I've been lucky. I will admit that. I've been lucky. But that's because I've made a presence for myself on the internet. And because of doing that, that has saved me from some unnecessary hardships. Yes. Okay, it's unfortunate that these ladies were suffering out in the rain, in the cold, and some didn't have shoes. It's unfortunate. That's because LA Hop doesn't work. LA Hop is the LA Homeless Outreach Program, I believe is the abbreviation for it. Or the acronym. That's the actual full title. And what LA Hop is supposed to do is they're supposed to coordinate you with a outreach team to get you the assistance that you need. Okay, you put in an LA Hop request, and I've done this. You put in an LA Hop request, it takes about 2 to 3 weeks. I guess I guess you could argue it depends on the pandemic. It depends on how many requests there is. Yada, yada, ba, ba, ba. Sadly, you get stuck, depending on where you live, you can get stuck with a really bad organization. Now, what I mean by really bad is that they come out and then they're like, well, we don't have any resources. So then it's like, well, why did you come out? At least in my head, I'm like, then why would you come out then? If you don't have anything, then why come out? Why take the request? Why? It's usually something along the lines of, well, we just want to make sure your health is okay at the very least. Yeah. It's whatever. 211 payphones, things like that. I mean, before the rain, okay, in the area that they're talking, where they're walking, there is plenty of shelters with resources, drop-in centers. And I get it. They're going to run out of things to give out because lack of donations. I get it. And it's really messed up. But again, I wouldn't say that's the city or county's fault. I would say that's the understaffing, probably. Understaffing of the organizations, the ones taking the LA Hop requests, the supposed outreach teams that are supposed to be out roaming around, things like that. It has everything to do with the outreach teams, not necessarily the city or the county. Because, you see all the time, like Target donates gift cards, Nike, Adidas, Skechers. I don't know about recently, but I know past tense, they used to donate gift cards for shoes. Things like that. So, I mean, why they don't have them is beyond me. I can't answer for the nonprofits, but I know they're available. Like, companies a lot of the time do give them. I've had the experience of getting a Target gift card, in the amount of like $50 for like a pair of shoes. But it wasn't for me, it was for someone else. But I had to use my information to help someone else, which is kind of dumb, but whatever, because that's depriving me of a resource that I could have used someday eventually. But that's okay. I did it for them. So yeah, to say without shoes, okay, a little far stretch. But you have to keep in mind there's also the Obama phone. The Obama phone is literally called the reason that because President Obama introduced a bill or had it passed. I can't remember the technical details, but basically President Obama had set it up where homeless people or low income people can get a free phone. With that said, we call it the Obama phone. It still exists, even though it's technically not the Obama phone, like part of the Lifeline program. You can get a free phone. Now, you might be like, well, what if they already have the phone and things like that? 211 sucks. I give more helpful information on Reddit, on Twitter, about resources than 211. And 211 is a nonprofit organization that has such dated information that it's not even helpful. So if the judge wants to do something, how about getting 211 to get them to update their information, provide more reliable information? Okay. But it's unfortunate that they were suffering out in the rain, even though somebody, I think, and this is just my opinion, as someone who has been out homeless on the streets long enough, you usually have a plan A, B, C, and D. So you have a dry spot, you have a spot that you can go to that you know will protect you from the rain, and if those spots are not available, you have another spot just in case. And then finally, you have something set aside as an emergency fund. Because General Relief and Cash Aid gives like $220. $220 if you go to the cheapest hole in the wall. Excuse me. Go to the cheapest hole in the wall motel, with roaches and everything, community bathroom. I mean, hole in the wall, like the night is $50 a night. Oh, and they don't give you a key. They have to manually let you into your room. Type of hotel. Yeah. 220 will cover at least 4 nights with $20 to eat. $20 should last a person who doesn't have a drug or substance abuse at least those 4 days worth of food. So the judge is asking the officials to outline steps the city has taken and intends to take to tackle homelessness. Oh boy, this comes with a long laundry list, but more oversight. I was part of Project Room Key. I had all my documentation, doctor's paperwork, everything to prove that I belonged in Project Room Key. Okay? The lady at the Project Room Key site, and this is the short version, the lady at the Project Room Key site admitted that no one else had their paperwork, but they were transferred out before me. And because I was the last one transferred out, oh, sorry, all Project rooms locations are taken up. I said, but FEMA and the county requires you to have your paperwork and medical proof. Yeah, but nobody had their paperwork and we just transferred them anyway. I've called on Lucy Roy Ball, my local congresswoman, to do an investigation. I requested FEMA to do an investigation. I've asked the county board of supervisors to start an investigation. I've asked the governor's office under Gavin to do an investigation. Nothing has been done. There's no oversight, dedicated oversight to handle serious allegations. If this judge wants to make the county do something, starting there would be nice. But I already know the county and the city have nothing to say for that. Okay. Okay. And why is LASA? And this is my final question, I guess I would have for the public meeting is why is LASA still have oversight? Considering that they had an audit done on them, they were way under margin. They weren't meeting the needs or the requirements and contractual obligations. Basically doing nothing. And you call them today, and it's like, oh no, we don't have anything. But yet they claim on Twitter, oh, we spend about 40. We can use up to 40,000 in services every year. But when I want a motel voucher, we don't have that. You call 211. We only have motel vouchers for people who have AIDS or HIV. And there's only two ways. Well, probably more than two ways to get it. But the two common ways is slamming and the up the boohoo. So by providing motel vouchers for people who have AIDS, HIV, and they're slamming, you're basically giving them a private place to slam and become a possible issue for the motel or hotel in question should the person overdose. Why? What about the homeless people who have the mental health conditions, can't get the help, chronically homeless, make very little, lucky if they work 4 hours a week, but need a motel or hotel voucher to get out of the rainy weeks in the season? How about those people, Your Honor? Like, really? What about the homeless people that are stuck with child support and alimony and can't make their payments, so they choose to be homeless because can't charge the homeless with alimony and child support if they're homeless, and refuse to get a job and work and live off of GR? What about those people? What about the people that lost their job because their car was impounded for too many parking tickets, unpaid parking tickets? Why is there not a waiver during this pandemic? Or a pardon or something of that sort? Why is there none of these things that contribute to homelessness being discussed? These are the things I would like to bring up at this meeting, and many other questions. If the person that's stiffed with alimony or child support becomes homeless because they can't afford the payments, you could say, they could work 2 jobs or 3 jobs. Well, then that's where the problem comes into effect. Okay. Okay. What about the people that got their car impounded, and because their car was impounded, they couldn't make it to work, therefore ended up losing their job, therefore becoming homeless because of that? What about the homeless women that choose to get pregnant because the only way to get off the streets is if you're a single parent with kid or a family with a kid or an elderly or physical disabilities, meaning wheelchair bound? You're instantly picked up and taken off the streets. A family with a kid spends maybe a day on the street at the very most. Next day, motel. Easy. I've seen it firsthand. I can point out the sites. If some official were to follow me around, I could say, give an answer for this. What's this? What about all the single individual adults that team up together to form encampments Why are you not giving them a room to share? If they're willing to, live next to each other, why not share a room? Right? What about, there's a lot. I guess the last thing I should mention, and this is the very last thing I'll mention. I'm going to go back to Twitter. Back to my messages here. Okay. So if I could pull up this tweet. Janice Hahn is another county board supervisor. And she mentions the County of LA Small Business Stabilization Loan Program opened up today for small business financially impacted by this pandemic. Loans up to $3 million are available, but you must complete a free webinar to qualify. More information and then a link. And then I mention, or I'll give you my precise answer to this. My gripe with this is that you could easily offer the residents of LA County a similar program to catch up on rent, pay bills, help get working homeless people off the streets with a low APR. Look good for the county. The county still makes a dime, and it would boost the economy. So if they did the same program for city and county residents and offered me a loan with a low APR of up to $3 million, I, a person who works while homeless, could easily afford the APR. Granted, yeah, my credit score shot up because when you become homeless, you get desperate for money. And in some situations, guess what? Your credit is going to tank. So they would have to not acknowledge my credit. They would just have to look at, are you working? What are you doing? What's your income? Things like, aside from your score, what are you doing to make money? And base it off that. But, if I get a $3 million loan, heck yeah, I don't even need a full $3 million, to be honest. I probably just need $1 million. Buy a house within the range of like $250,000 to like $600,000. Buy the house. And just pay off the loan. That's it. That's all I want to do is just get off the street. The motel room I'm in is running me almost about $2,000 a month. And by the graces of God, I've been pulling it off somehow. And that's a long conversation for another story, for another time. But yeah, you know what? If this judge had to do something, that would be the thing. Make them switch the priorities. Cancel out the small business stabilization loan program. Make that for residents, including homeless people who are working. I unfortunately had to file for EDD because the hours were getting way too small, hours per week. I was lucky to get 4 hours a week. I'm hoping that the PUA, which is the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance, helps. It's not going to help by much. $300 a week. $300 a week is only like about 3 nights in a motel room. $300 a week is not enough. But it's something, right? I'm getting at my wit's end with this. I'm not getting no answers, no investigation, no nothing. But I hope somebody finds this information helpful to somebody, or not helpful to somebody, but these are the few examples I would mention at this meeting, if I could. There's plenty more. I could talk about this for hours, but I just wanted to make this video to cover this article and what I plan to do. And depending on how much time I am allowed, if at all, meaning even if I get there, is it actually open to the public? Can I come in and speak? Or am I going to be forced to stand by and listen. Because my other gripe about this, what the judge is doing, is that there's no call in. There's no, hey, email here to voice your concern or opinion. And there's no publicly mentioned option anywhere about physically showing up. So I hope that this eventually leads somewhere. It's the change we need, but unfortunately, there is not a lot being done. Unfortunately. So, I don't know. But that's all for this video. Thank you for listening.